I am Allison Mitchell, 32 years old, and my entire life has been a quest to be enough for my parents. The empty chairs at my wedding still haunt me 3 years later, a gaping hole where family should have been. Funny how after selling my company, that shiny Porsche 911 Turbo S sitting in my driveway suddenly made me visible again. The same parents who couldn't make it to witness my vows somehow found time to reconnect when my net worth hit 8 figures. Before I dive into the story that still makes my chest tighten, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to create your own definition of family. Growing up in Lexington, a pristine suburb outside Boston, everything in our household revolved around appearances. My parents, Rebecca and Michael Mitchell, weren't just obsessed with status, they collected it like precious gems. Our Tudor-style home was immaculate, worthy of Architectural Digest, but cold as a museum. My achievements weren't celebrated, they were expected, then scrutinized for flaws. I still remember bringing home my first report card with straight A's in 3rd grade. Most parents would have been thrilled, maybe put it on the fridge or taken their kid for ice cream. Not mine. My father flipped through each subject, his lips pursed, before asking, why only an A- in penmanship? That single A became the entire conversation. Nothing about the hours I'd spent studying math facts or practicing spelling words. Just the one area where I'd fallen short of perfection. My mother was no better. When I was 7, I started taking piano lessons. I practiced diligently, sometimes until my fingers ached. At my first recital, I played for Elise nearly perfectly, just one small stumble in the middle section. Afterward, while other parents hugged their children regardless of how they performed, my mother's first words were, "You should have practiced that middle part more." Everyone noticed when you messed up. Sports were another battlefield. I joined the swim team in elementary school and quickly showed promise. At my first major competition, I took 2nd place in the 50-meter freestyle. When I climbed out of the pool, dripping and proud of my silver medal, my father said, "The girl who won is going to nationals." That should be your goal. No congratulations, no pride, just the reminder that 2nd place meant first loser. My 10th birthday stands out as particularly painful. I'd wanted a small sleepover with my 4 closest friends, pizza, movies, and staying up late giggling about nothing and everything. Instead, my parents organized an elaborate garden party and invited the children of their colleagues and business associates, kids I barely knew who arrived in pressed outfits with perfectly wrapped gifts. My actual friends weren't invited because their parents weren't connected enough. I spent my own birthday making small talk with strangers while my mother networked with their parents. The one bright spot in my childhood was my grandmother, Eleanor. Unlike my parents, she never measured my worth by my accomplishments. Her small apartment was cluttered and lived in, with mismatched furniture and shelves overflowing with books. When I visited, she'd make hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and listen, really listen, to whatever I wanted to talk about. "Allie," she would say, using the nickname my parents thought was too informal, "your value isn't in what you achieve. It's in who you are." She'd tap my chest right over my heart. "And who you are is already enough." Those visits sustained me, gave me glimpses of what unconditional love looked like. When she passed away during my senior year of high school, I felt like I'd lost my only ally. High school intensified the pressure. I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA, became editor of the school newspaper, captained the debate team, and volunteered at the local hospital, not because I enjoyed all these activities, but because they were what my parents expected. College applications loomed like an approaching storm. Every dinner conversation revolved around SAT scores and early decision strategies. The state science competition my junior year crystallized everything. I'd worked for months on a project about encrypted communication protocols, staying up late coding and testing my theories. I won first place at the state level, beating nearly 100 other contestants. But when the ceremony ended, all my parents could talk about was Jason Kim, who took 3rd place, but had already been accepted to Harvard. If you'd focused more on academic competitions earlier, you might have had his opportunities, my father said on the drive home, my trophy sitting forgotten in the back seat. That same year, I met Kristen Bennett in AP Computer Science. Unlike me, she pursued her interests with genuine passion rather than parental pressure. Her family celebrated her B+ in calculus because she'd worked hard for it, and they cheered just as loudly for her photography that won a local contest. Through Kristen, I glimpsed what supportive family dynamics looked like, and we quickly became inseparable. Her home became my sanctuary, where I could breathe without feeling I was being evaluated with every inhale. When college acceptance letters arrived, I had options, including Cornell, which my parents had designated as acceptable. But something in me rebelled. Boston University offered me a full scholarship for their computer science program, recognized as one of the best in the country. When I announced my decision at dinner, my father set down his fork with a clinical precision that spelled trouble. "We didn't invest in your education for 18 years, so you could attend a second-tier school," he said. "BU isn't second-tier, Dad. Their computer science program is ranked in the top 20 nationally." "Rankings can be bought," my mother chimed in. "The connections you make at an Ivy are what matter. Think about your future, Allison." But for once I was. Just not the future they had mapped out for me. I chose Boston University, and the frost in our house dropped to Arctic levels. My parents attended my high school graduation with faces that could have been carved from marble, and the summer before college featured minimal conversation and maximum tension. I left for college with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and the first inkling that perhaps the distance from my parents might be a blessing rather than a punishment. Freshman year at Boston University felt like stepping into color after living in grayscale. My dorm room might have been small, with its concrete walls and squeaky twin bed, but it was mine, a space where no one monitored my achievements or tallied my failures. My roommate Jasmine had purple hair, 5 ear piercings, and laughed more in our first week together than I had in the previous year. My parents' disappointment manifested in decreased contact. Our Sunday phone calls, a ritual throughout my childhood, dwindled to brief, stilted conversations every few weeks. Care packages, which other students received with regularity, never arrived. When Thanksgiving approached, my parents informed me they had accepted an invitation to spend the holiday in Aspen with business associates. I spent it with Jasmine's family instead, where her grandmother insisted I take seconds of everything and no one once asked about my midterm grades. During sophomore year, I registered for Introduction to Cybersecurity on a whim. The course changed my trajectory. Coding challenges that kept me awake until 3 a.m. didn't feel like work. They felt like puzzles I was eager to solve. The professor, Dr. Winters, noticed my aptitude and encouraged me to explore the field further. It was in that same class that I first noticed Marcus Chin. He sat in the back row, asked insightful questions, and wore the same faded MIT sweatshirt despite not attending MIT. After class one day, he approached me about forming a study group. 2 weeks later, we were dating. Marcus came from a middle-class family in Chicago. His father taught high school mathematics, and his mother ran a small bookstore. They had sacrificed to send him to BU, believing in his potential. When we spoke on the phone, they asked about my interests, not just my grades. During spring break, Marcus invited me to visit Chicago. His family lived in a modest 3-bedroom house filled with books, laughter, and the smell of his mother's legendary dumplings. They welcomed me as if we'd known each other for years. "You're practically glowing," his mother Lisa said, helping me set the dinner table. "Marcus said you're brilliant with computers." "I enjoy cybersecurity," I admitted, though my parents think it's a phase before law school. Lisa looked puzzled. "But why law if computers make you happy?" Such a simple question, yet no one had ever asked it. When I called my parents to tell them about my growing interest in cybersecurity, their response was predictably dismissive. "It's not a sustainable career path," my father declared over speakerphone. "Tech is volatile. Law provides stability and prestige." "I'm actually really good at this, Dad." Dr. Winters thinks I could publish my research on encryption vulnerabilities. "Publishing in student journals isn't going to build a career, Allison," my mother chimed in. "We've already mentioned you to Richard Barnes at his firm. He's willing to consider you for an internship after junior year." The holiday dinner during junior year became the flashpoint. I'd secured a summer internship at Sentinel, a leading cybersecurity firm in Boston. When I shared the news, you would have thought I'd announced plans to join the circus. "This is getting ridiculous," my father said, setting down his wine glass with enough force that the red liquid sloshed dangerously close to the rim. "We didn't pay for your education, so you could become some glorified IT person." "That's not what cybersecurity is, Dad. It's one of the fastest-growing fields in tech. Companies are desperate for qualified professionals. Companies also downsize tech departments the moment the economy hiccups," my mother added. "You're being short-sighted." "Actually, cybersecurity is considered recession-proof," Marcus interjected politely. He joined us for the holiday, a decision I was increasingly regretting. Even in economic downturns, organizations can't afford to neglect their digital security. My father's gaze could have frozen fire. "And you are?" "Dad, I told you. This is Marcus, my boyfriend. He's double majoring in computer science and business." Was all my father said, before changing the subject to my cousin Jennifer, who had just been accepted to Yale Law. Later that night, after Marcus was settled in the guest room, separate floors, per my parents' insistence, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "He seems nice enough, Allison, but is he really boyfriend material? The Chin family isn't exactly in our social circle. The Chin family is kind, supportive, and actually interested in what makes me happy," I shot back. "And they've never once implied I was a disappointment for following my passions." The look she gave me was part hurt, part indignation. "We want what's best for you. Someday you'll understand." Graduation day arrived in a blur of black robes and ceremonial traditions. My parents attended, sitting stiffly in the audience, while Marcus' entire family cheered loudly enough for both sides when my name was called. At the small celebration afterward at a nearby restaurant, my father made a toast that felt more like a eulogy for the lawyer daughter he'd never have. "To Allison's unconventional path," he said, raising his glass with a tight smile. "May it lead somewhere worthwhile." They left before dessert was served, citing an early flight the next morning. Marcus' parents stayed until the restaurant closed, his mother hugging me tightly and slipping a small gift box into my hand, a delicate silver necklace with a compass pendant. "To help you find your way," she whispered. "Though I think you're already on the right path." I started my job at Sentinel the following week, and Marcus and I found a small apartment halfway between my office and the tech startup where he'd been hired. We furnished it with secondhand finds and made it ours. My parents' housewarming gift arrived by courier, a check with a post-it note saying, "For something suitable for the living room." I donated the money to the Computer Science Scholarship Fund at BU. My grandmother's health declined rapidly that fall. The cancer that had been in remission returned with a vengeance, and I spent every weekend I could at her care facility. During our last coherent conversation, she held my hand with surprising strength. "I'm sorry about your parents, Allie," she said, her voice thin but determined. "Some people don't know how to love without conditions. That's their loss." "I'm trying to make peace with it," I told her. "Peace is good," she nodded. "But don't confuse peace with doormat. You can forgive without allowing yourself to be diminished." She patted my hand. "Set boundaries with love, dear. And remember, family is what you create, not just what you're born into." She passed away 3 days later. At the funeral, my parents were more concerned with managing the arrangements perfectly than mourning. I stood between Marcus and Kristen, drawing strength from the family I was beginning to create for myself. 3 years after graduation, my career trajectory resembled a rocket launch. I'd been promoted twice at Sentinel, leading a specialized team focused on financial sector vulnerabilities. The work was challenging and fulfilling, with tangible impact. When Chase Bank credited our team with preventing what could have been a multi-million-dollar breach, I received a substantial bonus and industry recognition. During a routine security audit for a healthcare client, I discovered a fundamental flaw in how many systems handled encryption during data transfers. Working nights and weekends, I developed a patch that addressed the vulnerability. When I presented my findings to Sentinel's executive team, they were impressed, but cautious about market applications. That's when James Finley, a senior developer on my team, suggested we explore the potential independently. Soon, James, Our colleague Priya Nair and I were spending every spare moment refining what we called secure transfer, a more elegant, efficient solution than anything on the market. We should start our own company, Priya said one night as we huddled over takeout containers in my living room turned command center. This could revolutionize how data transfers are secured. Marcus, who had been quietly supporting our marathon coding sessions with coffee and occasional reality checks, agreed. You've built something genuinely innovative here. Sentinel's great, but they'll water this down by committee. Launching a startup was terrifying. We each contributed our savings. My $30,000, James's $25,000, and Priya's $40,000, barely enough for 6 months of operations if we took minimal salaries. We worked from Marcus and my apartment to save on office space, converted our second bedroom into a server room, and lived on ramen and determination. The first year was brutal. 2 potential investors walked away at the last minute. A larger competitor threatened a dubious patent infringement lawsuit. I didn't sleep more than 4 consecutive hours for months. Marcus kept our personal life functioning, handling everything from grocery shopping to bill payments, while excelling at his own job. Amidst the startup chaos, Marcus proposed on a rare weekend away in the Berkshires. The small cabin he'd rented had spotty cell service, a deliberate choice to force me to disconnect. After a hike to a secluded waterfall, he knelt on the damp earth and presented a ring that I later learned had belonged to his grandmother. You're the most brilliant, determined person I've ever met, he said, voice steady despite the nervous flush on his cheeks. I want to build a life with you, the good days and the stressful ones, the successes and the setbacks. Will you marry me? I said yes before he finished the question. When we returned to Boston, I called my parents to share the news. My mother answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. That's nice, dear, she said after a beat of silence. We'll have to meet him properly at some point. Mom, you've met Marcus multiple times over the past 5 years. Yes, of course, she replied vaguely. The computer boy. Your father's on a conference call, but I'll tell him. We should discuss venue options. The Sandersons' daughter had a lovely ceremony at the Fairmont last spring. I ended the call feeling deflated. Marcus found me staring at my phone. That bad? He asked, pulling me into a hug. They couldn't even pretend to be excited. I mumbled against his shoulder. And she literally suggested the Fairmont. We can barely make rent. Then we'll have exactly the wedding we can afford, with people who actually care about us, he said firmly. Wedding planning with Lisa Chin was everything I'd never known to hope for. She didn't push expensive options or traditional must-haves, instead asking thoughtful questions about what would make the day meaningful for us. We settled on a spring ceremony at a renovated industrial space in Cambridge, with simple decorations and a taco truck instead of formal catering. Your mom has great taste, Kristen commented during a dress shopping expedition. And she actually listens when you say you don't want a ball gown. She's the anti-Rebecca Mitchell, I agreed, referring to my mother by her full name as had become our habit. Despite the strained relationship, I couldn't imagine not inviting my parents to the wedding. Marcus encouraged me to extend the olive branch, hoping they might rise to the occasion. I sent the formal invitations 9 months before the wedding, including one addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Michael Mitchell with a handwritten note expressing my hope they would attend. Weeks passed without response. I sent a follow-up email. Nothing. As the RSVP deadline approached, I tried calling. My calls went to voicemail. I left increasingly desperate messages. Mom, Dad, the caterer needs a final headcount. Are you planning to come? It's Allison again. The wedding's in 3 weeks. Please let me know if you're coming. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother finally answered. Her voice was cool, detached. I'm afraid we won't be able to attend, Allison. Your father has an important conference in London that weekend. It's been scheduled for months. I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. The wedding has been scheduled for 9 months, Mom. I sent the save the date last summer. These international conferences are planned years in advance, she replied dismissively. And frankly, we're still disappointed about your career choices. This rushed marriage isn't helping matters. Rushed? Marcus and I have been together for 5 years. Yes, well, I could practically hear her shrug. When you're ready to make more appropriate life choices, we'll be here. The call ended shortly after, leaving me shaking with anger and grief. Marcus found me sitting on our kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face. "They're not coming," I choked out. "They scheduled a conference instead." Marcus sat beside me, his back against the cabinets, and pulled me close. "Then they'll miss seeing their incredible daughter get married. It's completely their loss." "What kind of parents miss their only child's wedding?" I asked, the hurt turning to disbelief. "The kind who don't deserve you," he said simply. That night, we talked for hours about what family truly meant. The next morning, I woke up resolved. My parents had made their choice. I would make mine. Kristen stepped up as my maid of honor, organizing a last-minute bachelorette weekend that focused on laughter rather than luxury. Lisa called daily with small questions and updates, her excitement filling some of the void left by my mother's absence. When she asked if I had something borrowed for the wedding tradition, I admitted I didn't. "I have the perfect thing," she said, and later presented me with a vintage blue sapphire bracelet that had been in her family for generations. As the wedding approached, I focused on gratitude for the family I was marrying into and the friends who had become my chosen family, rather than the empty spaces my parents had left. The morning of my wedding arrived with perfect spring sunshine streaming through the windows of the hotel suite where Kristen, 2 college friends, and I were getting ready. The photographer captured us in matching robes, champagne flutes in hand, smiles that reached our eyes despite the 2 people missing from the celebration. "You look absolutely stunning," Kristen said as she helped fasten the last button on my dress, a simple, elegant sheath with delicate lace overlay that Lisa had helped me find. "Do I look like someone worth showing up for?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Kristen's reflection met mine in the mirror, her eyes fierce with loyalty. "You look like someone who deserves so much better than what they gave you. And today, you're getting exactly that." At the venue, a restored warehouse with exposed brick and soaring ceilings, I peered through a crack in the door at the gathering guests. 2 chairs in the front row, marked with small, reserved signs, remained conspicuously empty. I had insisted on keeping them, some irrational part of me hoping for a last-minute miracle. The wedding coordinator gave the musicians their cue, and the string quartet began playing Canon in D. I stood alone at the entrance, bouquet clutched in trembling hands, suddenly overwhelmed by the prospect of walking that long aisle alone. Then Howard Chin, Marcus's father, appeared beside me in his meticulously pressed suit, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "I thought you might like some company for this walk," he said gently. "If you'll permit me the honor." Tears welled up as I nodded, unable to speak. He offered his arm, and together we processed toward Marcus, who watched with undisguised adoration and understanding in his eyes. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" the officiant asked, following the traditional script we hadn't thought to change. Howard's voice rang clear and certain. "Her family does." The subtle emphasis on family, meaning himself, Lisa, and all the people who truly loved me, wasn't lost on anyone. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. We exchanged the vows we had written ourselves, promising partnership, respect, and unwavering support. When Marcus referenced building our own definition of family, I nearly broke down, saved only by the warm pressure of his hands holding mine. The reception transformed the solemnity to celebration. String lights twinkled overhead as our 100-odd guests mingled, dined on gourmet tacos, and helped themselves to the donut wall we'd chosen instead of traditional cake. Howard's toast brought a hush over the crowd. He stood, champagne glass raised, looking directly at me. "When Marcus first told us about Allison," he said, "she's the strongest person I've ever met." Over the years, we've seen that strength firsthand, not just in her professional accomplishments, but in her capacity for kindness despite circumstances that might have hardened others. Today, we don't just gain a daughter-in-law, we celebrate the daughter we've been blessed to know for the past 5 years. By the final word, there wasn't a dry eye at the head table. Lisa squeezed my hand under the tablecloth. Kristen's maid of honor speech followed, equal parts humor and heart. "Some people collect stamps or vintage records," she began. "Allison collects family." Not the kind determined by blood or obligation, but the genuine article, people who choose each other every day. If you're here, you're part of that collection. And trust me, there's no better family to belong to. Despite my determination to remain present and joyful, I eventually needed a moment alone. I slipped away to the venue's surprisingly elegant bathroom, locking myself in a stall as tears finally broke free. The soft knock at the door minutes later could only be one person. "Allie? It's Kristen. You okay in there?" I emerged, mascara smudged despite the waterproof promise on the tube. Just needed a minute. It's stupid. I'm happier than I've ever been, surrounded by amazing people who actually show up. Why am I crying over two people who couldn't be bothered? Because they're your parents, and on some fundamental level, we never stop hoping our parents will be who we need them to be, she said, handing me a tissue. It's not stupid. It's human. The Chens have been more parents to me in 5 years than mine have in my entire life, I said, dabbing at my eyes. Then that's who you dance with, celebrate with, and treasure tonight, Kristen replied firmly. The family that shows up gets the privilege of your joy. Later, after we'd returned to the reception and danced until my feet protested, Lisa and Howard found us as the evening wound down. "We wanted you to know," Lisa said, taking both my hands in hers, "that we're here for both of you, whatever you need. Parents, confidants, babysitters someday, whatever role you want us to fill." "You've already been the parents I needed today," I told them, my voice steady at last. "I can never thank you enough for that." That night in our hotel suite, Marcus and I talked about the day, the perfect moments and the painful absences. "I want us to build something different," I told him, curled against his side. "A family where people know they matter not for what they achieve, but simply because they exist." "We already started today," he replied, kissing my forehead. "And we'll keep building it, one day at a time." Our honeymoon in Tuscany provided the distance, both physical and emotional, to process everything. Walking through ancient villages, sampling wine from local vineyards, and falling asleep to the sound of distant church bells, I felt something calcify within me. Not bitterness, as I had feared, but resolution. I couldn't change my parents, but I could change how their choices affected me. On our last night in Italy, sitting on a terrace overlooking rolling hills dotted with cypress trees, I finally deleted the draft email I'd been composing to my parents throughout the trip, explanations and justifications they hadn't earned and wouldn't acknowledge. Instead, I sent a brief note with a single wedding photo, the one where Howard walked me down the aisle. "We missed you at the wedding. Hope London was worth it." I never received a reply. 2 years after the wedding, Secure Transfer was no longer operating from our apartment. We'd moved to proper offices in Cambridge's tech corridor, expanding from 3 founders to a team of 30 dedicated employees. Our proprietary security protocol had become the gold standard for healthcare data transmission, with financial institutions clamoring to implement our solutions. The Boston Business Journal ran a feature on us titled "Security's New Guard," complete with a photo shoot of the founding team. I kept a copy in my desk drawer, not out of vanity, but as a reminder of how far we'd come from those ramen-fueled coding sessions. Marcus had been my rock throughout the company's growth phase. He'd listen to my late-night concerns, offer perspective when I was too deep in the code to see the bigger picture, and ensure I occasionally remembered to sleep. When I worked 80-hour weeks during our Series A fundraising, he'd bring dinner to the office and quietly set up at an empty desk, just to be near me. "You should go home," I'd tell him around midnight. "At least one of us should see our bed tonight." "And miss watching you revolutionize cybersecurity?" "Not a chance," he'd reply, handing me another espresso. The tipping point came when NextSEC, one of the largest tech conglomerates in the world, took notice of our growing market share. Their initial email was casual, just a senior VP mentioning he'd love to explore synergies over coffee. That coffee meeting turned into a series of increasingly formal discussions, culminating in an acquisition offer that left me staring at my laptop screen in disbelief. "They want to buy us," I told James and Priya during an emergency meeting in our conference room. $40 million, with earnout potential to $60 million based on performance metrics. James whistled low. "That's significant." Priya, ever the pragmatist, was already scanning the document. What about autonomy? Will we maintain control over product development? We debated for weeks. The money was life-changing, but we'd built secure transfer with a specific vision. Would that survive corporate assimilation? We consulted with lawyers, advisors, and fellow founders who had gone through acquisitions. In the end, the decision came down to impact. As part of Next SEC, our security protocol could be implemented globally, protecting vastly more data than we could reach as an independent company. We negotiated hard on the autonomy question, securing a 3-year commitment that our team would remain intact with independent operational control. The day we signed the acquisition papers was surreal. My portion after taxes, approximately $15 million, appeared in my account with anticlimactic simplicity, just a number with more zeros than I'd ever seen attached to my name. That night, we hosted a celebration for our entire team at a rooftop bar overlooking the Boston skyline. I raised a toast to the people who had made it possible, my throat tight with emotion. 2 years ago, James, Priya, and I were working out of my apartment, convinced we'd built something valuable, but terrified no one else would see it. Each of you took a chance on our vision, often leaving more stable jobs to join us. Today isn't just about the founders. It's about every line of code, every late night, every time you explained our product to a skeptical client. We did this together. Later, as the celebration wound down, Marcus and I sat at a corner table, contemplating our new reality. So, he said, twirling his whiskey glass. $15 million. That's a lot of ramen. I laughed, the tension of the past months finally lifting. We should be responsible. Pay off the mortgage, max out retirement accounts, set aside funds for future children. Absolutely, he nodded seriously. And after all that responsible adult behavior, what's the one completely frivolous thing you want to buy? The thing you'd never justify otherwise. I didn't have to think long. A Porsche 911 Turbo S, guards red. His eyebrows shot up. I was thinking maybe a nice vacation or some ridiculously expensive shoes. You went straight to German engineering. I've wanted one since I was 14 and saw one at a car show my father took me to, I admitted. It was the only time he seemed genuinely happy to have me along. He knew the engineer who designed the cooling system or something. Marcus considered this, then raised his glass. To the Porsche fund, then. After setting up substantial donations to cybersecurity scholarship programs for underprivileged students and ensuring our financial future was secure, I found myself at the Porsche dealership in Westwood. The salesman, initially dismissive of the young woman in jeans and a BU sweatshirt, became considerably more attentive when I mentioned I was looking at the Turbo S models. Would you like to take one for a test drive? He offered, leading me to a gleaming silver example on the showroom floor. The moment I sat in the driver's seat, something clicked into place. The car responded to my touch like an extension of myself, the acceleration pressing me back as we merged onto the highway. It wasn't just transportation, it was engineering artistry, precision made tangible. I'll take it, I told the salesman when we returned. But I want it in guards red. The day my Porsche was delivered, I experienced a strange mixture of emotions. Exhilaration, certainly. The car was even more beautiful in person, the red paint gleaming in the sunlight. But also a twinge of guilt. Who was I to spend $135,000 on something so unnecessarily extravagant? Marcus found me standing in the driveway, keys in hand, still haven't taken my first solo drive. Second thoughts, he asked. It feels indulgent, I admitted. My parents always acted like money was the ultimate measure of success, and here I am, buying the most stereotypical I've made it car possible. He considered this. Maybe it's not about proving anything. Maybe it's about finally having something simply because it brings you joy, not because it checks some achievement box. I turned the key in my hand, feeling its weight. When did you get so wise? I married up, he grinned. Now go enjoy your ridiculously beautiful car. You've earned it, not because of what it's worth, but because of what you're worth. That first drive through Boston, the engine growling beneath me as I navigated traffic with newfound confidence, felt like freedom. I even drove through my old neighborhood, past the house where I'd grown up striving for an approval that never came. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd finally achieved success beyond my parents' wildest expectations, and they weren't part of it. As I pulled back into our driveway that evening, I realized Marcus was right. The car wasn't about status or proving anything. It was about claiming joy on my own terms, without apology or justification. That might be the most valuable thing I'd purchased with my newfound wealth. 3 weeks after buying the Porsche, I ran into Susan Blackwell at Whole Foods, my mother's longtime friend from the country club circuit. I was examining avocados when she appeared beside me, designer handbag swinging from her bony wrist. Allison? Allison Mitchell? Goodness, I almost didn't recognize you. Her voice carried through the produce section, drawing glances from other shoppers. I forced a smile. Hello, Mrs. Blackwell. It's Mitchelton now, actually. Oh, of course, the wedding. She waved dismissively. Such a shame your parents couldn't attend. International obligations, Rebecca mentioned. Before I could respond to this diplomatic fiction, she continued, I saw your picture in the business journal. Some sort of computer security company? Rebecca must be so proud. I doubted my mother had seen the article, but I nodded politely. It's been an exciting time. Indeed. Michael told Harold you'd done quite well for yourself. Some sort of acquisition. She leaned closer, the scent of expensive perfume overwhelming the earthy smell of vegetables. 8 figures, Harold mentioned. So my father was discussing my financial success at the club. Interesting. Something like that, I replied vaguely. It was nice seeing you, Mrs. Blackwell, but I should finish shopping. My husband's cooking dinner tonight. She patted my arm. Of course, dear. Do tell your parents hello when you speak to them. I left the store contemplating this bizarre interaction. My parents were apparently tracking my career closely enough to discuss it with friends, yet hadn't bothered to contact me directly in nearly 3 years. The following week, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in years, but still recognized instantly. My father's cell. Allison. His voice sounded exactly the same, precise, measured, with that undertone of evaluation. How are you? I stood in my office, staring out at the Boston skyline, momentarily speechless. I'm fine. This is unexpected. Yes, well. He cleared his throat. Your mother and I were thinking it's been too long since we've caught up. Perhaps dinner next week? The Capitol Grill downtown. No acknowledgement of the silence, no mention of missing my wedding, no congratulations on the business success he'd apparently discussed with others. Just dinner, as if we'd simply been busy with our separate lives. Why no? I asked, the question escaping before I could modulate my tone. Family is important, Allison. Despite our differences, you're still our daughter. I nearly laughed aloud at the audacity. Family was important 3 years ago too, Dad. When I got married. An uncomfortable pause followed. Perhaps this dinner would be an opportunity to move forward. Your mother is quite eager to reconnect. I doubted that very much, but curiosity was winning over anger. Fine. Next Wednesday at 7. Excellent. Will Marcus be joining us? The afterthought inclusion of my husband did not go unnoticed. Yes, we're a package deal now. After hanging up, I immediately called Marcus at his office. You're not going to believe this, I began without preamble. Your parents, he guessed, eerily accurate as always. How did you know? Just a hunch. Susan Blackwell saw you, which means your parents know about the acquisition, which means. He trailed off. Which means they suddenly remembered I exist, I finished. Dinner next Wednesday at Capitol Grill. Want me to conveniently come down with food poisoning? Absolutely not. I need you there as my sanity check. Then I'll be there, he promised. Want to take the Porsche? Might as well give them the full effect. I considered this. You know what? Yes. Yes, I do. The week passed in a blur of work commitments and mounting anxiety. By Wednesday evening, I was a bundle of nerves disguised in a sleek black dress and the sapphire bracelet Lisa had lent me for my wedding, now a permanent gift and personal talisman. Ready? Marcus asked, adjusting his tie in our hallway mirror. As I'll ever be, I replied, grabbing the Porsche keys from the entry table. We arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, deliberately choosing to be seated first, a small power play in what was sure to be an evening full of them. The valet's eyes widened appreciatively at the Porsche, and I felt a petty satisfaction knowing my parents would witness this reception. Sure enough, when they arrived precisely on time, I watched through the restaurant's front windows as they exited their town car and paused, taking in the guard's red Porsche now prominently displayed in the valet area. My father's eyebrows raised almost imperceptibly, the closest he came to visible surprise. They entered the restaurant with the practiced poise of people accustomed to making entrances. My mother, still thin and elegant at 62, wore a tasteful designer outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. My father, gray at the temples, but otherwise unchanged, surveyed the dining room like a general assessing a battlefield. I stood as they approached, Marcus rising beside me. "Mom, Dad, you remember my husband, Marcus?" "Of course," my father said, extending a hand. "Good to see you again." The maitre d' pulled out chairs for my parents, and an awkward silence descended as we settled into our seats. My mother broke it first. "You're looking well, Allison. That necklace is lovely." "Thank you. It was a gift from Lisa Chen." "Marcus's mother," I added, the unspoken comparison hanging between us. "How nice," she replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And how is your work?" "My company, you mean? The one that was featured in the Boston Business Journal? The one Dad's been discussing at the club." I kept my tone light, but Marcus's hand found my knee under the table in silent support. My father had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Word gets around. It sounds like you've done quite well for yourself." "We have," Marcus interjected smoothly. "The entire founding team has." The waiter arrived to take drink orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. Once he departed, my father leaned forward slightly. "That's quite a car outside. New acquisition?" "Yes, I've always wanted a 911 Turbo S. Since that car show you took me to when I was 14, actually." "Ah, I'd forgotten about that." He nodded appreciatively. Guards red. Classic choice. The conversation continued in this vein through appetizers, superficial, careful, with occasional landmines of subtext. My mother asked about our home, eyebrows raising when we mentioned our Cambridge address. My father inquired about Marcus's career with unexpected interest. Neither mentioned the wedding, the years of silence, or anything approaching an apology. By the main course, the purpose of the dinner began to emerge. "We're hosting a small gathering at the country club next month," my mother mentioned, cutting her fillet with surgical precision. "Nothing elaborate, just 30 or 40 close friends. We'd love for you both to attend." Translation: now that I was successful, they wanted to show me off. "We'd need to check our calendar," I replied noncommittally. "Do try to make it," my father pressed. Harold Blackwell is eager to discuss potential applications of your security protocols in the financial sector. Could be a valuable connection. There it was. Next SEC already has a robust financial services division, but thanks for thinking of it. It never hurts to have personal connections at the board level, he continued. Harold sits on 3 bank boards. Marcus deftly changed the subject, asking about recent renovations to the country club that my mother had mentioned earlier. The conversation drifted to safer territory until dessert arrived. "We've been thinking," my mother said, delicately positioning her dessert fork, "that perhaps it's time we saw more of each other. Family trips, even. We've been looking at vacation properties in Nantucket. Something with enough room for everyone." "Everyone?" I echoed. "Well, yes." She glanced meaningfully at me. "You're still young. There might be grandchildren someday. It would be nice to have a place for family gatherings." The presumption was staggering. After years of absence, they were planning shared vacation homes and hypothetical grandchildren? "That's forward-thinking of you," I managed. "We could show you some of the properties we're considering," my father added. "Get your input. One of them has a garage that could accommodate your car collection if you decide to expand beyond the Porsche." The check arrived before I could formulate a response that wouldn't involve causing a scene in a high-end restaurant. My father immediately reached for it. "Please allow me," he insisted. "It's the least we can do." I let him pay, watching as he handed over his platinum card with practiced efficiency. Outside, the valet brought the Porsche around, my parents watching with poorly disguised interest. "Impressive machine," my father commented, running a hand along the fender with something like reverence. "Thank you," I replied, accepting the keys from the valet. "It drives even better than it looks." "We should get together again soon," my mother said, air kissing near my cheek. "I'll email you about those properties." As Marcus and I settled into the Porsche, my parents waiting for their town car, I felt a strange emptiness. The dinner I'd dreaded for days had been neither the confrontation nor the reconciliation I'd subconsciously prepared for. It had been a business meeting, with me as the suddenly valuable asset they wished to acquire. "Well," Marcus said as we pulled away, "that was exactly what I should have expected," I finished, accelerating perhaps more aggressively than necessary. True to her word, my mother emailed the very next day with listings for multi-million-dollar vacation properties and suggested dates for viewing them. I let the email sit unanswered, unsure how to proceed with parents who seemed determined to pretend the past 3 years hadn't happened. The following Saturday morning, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened the door, I found both my parents standing on the porch, my mother clutching a folder of what appeared to be real estate listings. "We were in the neighborhood," my father explained, though our Cambridge address was nowhere near their Lexington home. "Thought we'd drop by to show you these properties in person." Caught off guard, I reluctantly invited them in, watching as they assessed our home with barely concealed judgment. "Charming," my mother commented, eyeing our eclectic furniture, a mix of mid-century pieces and comfortable favorites. "A bit small though, isn't it? For what you could afford now." Marcus appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "We like it here. The neighborhood has character." My father settled onto our sofa without invitation, opening his briefcase. "We brought something else you might find interesting. A business proposal." And there it was, the real agenda, finally revealed. My father spread documents across our coffee table while my mother perched on the edge of the sofa, her designer handbag placed carefully beside her as if afraid our furniture might contaminate it. Marcus caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I gave a small nod, and he settled into the armchair across from my parents, his presence a welcome anchor. "As you know," my father began in his boardroom voice, "I've been developing a boutique investment advisory firm catering to medical professionals. We've built a solid client base, but we're ready for expansion." I hadn't known, actually. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. He continued, oblivious to my thoughts. "We've identified the perfect office building in Back Bay. Prime location, excellent visibility, room for growth." He slid a glossy brochure toward me. "The opportunity is time-sensitive." My mother jumped in, her voice honeyed with false enthusiasm. "It's exactly the kind of property that appreciates substantially. A sound investment for everyone involved." I glanced at the brochure, then at the financial prospectus my father had also provided. "You're looking for investors?" "Partners," he corrected smoothly. "Family partners. We thought you might be interested in contributing around $300,000. An excellent opportunity to diversify your portfolio." $300,000. More than most people's houses. Requested casually over Saturday morning coffee in the home they'd never bothered to visit until now. Marcus cleared his throat. "That's a significant investment. What's the projected return timeline?" My father looked briefly annoyed at Marcus's question but recovered quickly. 5 to 7 years for full realization, but the tax advantages are immediate. I've prepared a complete proposal. He patted a thick folder. "We should discuss over lunch. We have reservations at Harvest at noon." "And while we eat," my mother added, sliding another glossy brochure forward, "we can look at these vacation properties. This one has the most darling guest cottage that would be perfect for when you visit. 4 bedrooms in the main house, plenty of room for grandchildren." The casual presumption that they would have access to our future children they'd likely judge and find wanting just as they had me, was the match that ignited my simmering anger. "Let me make sure I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You didn't speak to me for 3 years. You missed my wedding. You've never once congratulated me on my company's success. But now you want $300,000 for your business and joint vacation property where you can play grandparents to children that don't exist yet." My mother's smile faltered slightly. Allison, families have disagreements. We're trying to move forward. This isn't moving forward, I replied, picking up the investment proposal. This is pretending the past never happened so you can access my money. My father's expression hardened. That's an unfair characterization. We've always wanted what's best for you. What's best for me? I repeated, incredulous. When have you ever considered what I wanted? What made me happy? You couldn't even support my career choice until it made me rich. We had concerns about your choices because we have experience you lacked, my father countered. The tech sector is volatile. Law would have provided security. My company sold for $40 million. And we're proud of that achievement, my mother interjected quickly. Which is why we want to celebrate together as a family. Put the past behind us. The past being you missing my wedding. I pressed. Because I don't recall hearing an apology for that. My father waved dismissively. The London conference was scheduled months in advance. These things happen. No, Dad, they don't just happen. Parents don't just happen to miss their only daughter's wedding unless they're choosing to. Marcus reached over, his hand warm on mine, silently supporting, but letting me fight my own battle. My mother sighed dramatically. You've always been so sensitive, Allison. We couldn't reschedule an international conference for a wedding that, frankly, seemed rushed with a partner we barely knew. We'd been together for 5 years. Yes, well. She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. The point is, we're here now. When you're ready to be mature about this, we can discuss the investment opportunity and the vacation property. I stood abruptly, walking to the foyer closet. When I returned, I held the Porsche keys, which I tossed onto the coffee table between us. Is this what it takes to be your daughter? A car you can brag about at the club? Money you can invest in your business? Success you can take credit for somehow? My father stared at the keys, then at me. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Because the only time in my life you've shown genuine interest in me was when I was useful to you. Good grades to brag about. Achievements to mention at dinner parties. And now, money and status you can leverage. That's not true, my mother protested, but the protest sounded hollow even to her, judging by her expression. Isn't it? Tell me one thing about my life that you actually know. One thing that matters to me that isn't related to achievement or money. They exchanged glances, genuinely at a loss. My favorite book? Movie? What keeps me up at night? What makes me laugh? My hopes beyond career success? Anything? Silence stretched between us, damning in its emptiness. You don't know me, I continued, my voice softening not from gentleness but exhaustion. You never tried to. I was an accessory to your perfect life, not a person with my own dreams and needs. That's not fair, my father began, but Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but firm. With respect, Mr. Mitchell, what's not fair is showing up after 3 years of silence with investment proposals instead of apologies. What's not fair is missing your daughter's wedding and acting like it was a scheduling conflict rather than a choice. My father's face reddened. This doesn't concern you. Actually, it does, Marcus replied. Allison is my wife. Her well-being concerns me very much. If you want any relationship with me going forward, I said, it needs to be on entirely different terms. Not based on what I can give you or how I can enhance your social standing. And it starts with acknowledging the hurt you've caused, not just by missing the wedding, but through a lifetime of conditional love. My mother stood, gathering her handbag. I can see this was a mistake. When you're ready to be reasonable, Allison, you know how to reach us. Reasonable? I echoed. Is that what you call showing up after 3 years to ask for money? We didn't come for your money, my father insisted, though the investment proposal lying on the table contradicted him. We came to reconnect with our daughter. I picked up the Porsche keys and held them out again. Then why did you only reconnect after the Porsche and the acquisition? Why not when I got engaged? Or graduated college? Or started my company? He didn't take the keys, but his gaze lingered on them with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Something between desire and resentment. If money is truly the only language you understand, I continued, then we have nothing left to discuss. If you want an actual relationship with me, with us, it starts with honesty and ends with genuine interest in who I am, not what I have. My mother's expression shifted to one I recognized from childhood, disappointment tinged with martyrdom. "We've only ever wanted the best for you, Allison. Someday, when you have children, you'll understand the sacrifices parents make." "If I have children," I replied, "I'll make sure they never doubt they're loved for exactly who they are, not what they achieve. They'll never have to earn my presence at their wedding." My parents left shortly after, their business proposal and vacation property brochures abandoned on our coffee table. The door closed behind them with a quiet click that felt more final than a slam. I stood in the entryway, shaking with adrenaline and emotion, until Marcus's arms encircled me from behind. "You did good," he murmured against my hair. The dam broke then, tears flowing freely as years of pent-up hurt and anger found release. Marcus guided me to the sofa, holding me as I sobbed, for the little girl who could never be enough, for the bride whose parents couldn't be bothered to attend her wedding, for the woman still seeking approval she'd never receive. "I shouldn't care anymore," I managed between tears. "Why do I still care?" "Because you're human," Marcus answered simply. "And because unlike them, you have a heart that's capable of real love." We spent the remainder of that day in quiet togetherness, ordering takeout, watching mindless comedies, processing the confrontation. By evening, a strange peace had settled over me, not the peace of reconciliation, but of truth finally spoken aloud. "What now?" Marcus asked as we prepared for bed. "I don't know," I admitted. "Balls in their court, I guess. But I'm not holding my breath." I picked up my phone, noticing missed calls from both parents, but no voicemails or texts. Even now, they couldn't bring themselves to leave a message that might contain an apology. "Whatever happens," I said, setting the phone aside, "I'm done trying to earn their love. It's exhausting and it's never worked." Marcus kissed my forehead. "Their loss. Truly." For the first time, I fully believed him. 6 months passed with minimal contact from my parents. My father sent a terse email a week after our confrontation, stating they were disappointed by my reaction, but the door remains open when I'm ready to be reasonable. I didn't respond. My mother called on my birthday, leaving an awkward voicemail that made no mention of our last interaction, but invited me to lunch to catch up. I returned the call, setting clear boundaries. I was open to rebuilding our relationship, but only with acknowledgement of past hurts and commitment to genuine connection moving forward. "I don't understand why you insist on dwelling on perceived slights," she said, her voice frosty. "Families move forward, Allison. Moving forward requires honesty about the past, Mom. I'm willing to try if you are." We agreed to monthly lunches, just the two of us, neutral territory, no financial discussions allowed. They were stilted affairs at first, my mother defaulting to society gossip and superficial questions about my work. But I held firm to my boundaries, redirecting conversations toward substance when they veered into safe triviality. Meanwhile, I began seeing Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in family dynamics. Our weekly sessions became sacred space for unpacking the complex emotions surrounding my parents. "You can't change them," she reminded me during a particularly difficult session after another strained lunch with my mother. "The only person you can change is yourself, your reactions, your expectations, your boundaries." "I know," I sighed, twisting a tissue between my fingers. "But part of me still hopes that if I explain it just right, they'll finally understand." "That's natural," she nodded. "We all want our parents' approval and understanding. But your healing can't depend on their response." That lesson, that my healing wasn't contingent on my parents' participation, proved fundamental. I began reclaiming my narrative, separating my self-worth from their assessment. One unexpected step in that journey was selling the Porsche. 6 months after buying it, I listed it for sale, much to Marcus's surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked when I showed him the listing I'd created. "You love that car." "I do," I acknowledged. But I bought it partly as a statement, to myself, to them, to the world. I don't need that statement anymore. The car sold within 2 weeks to an enthusiastic buyer who appreciated it far more authentically than my father ever had. I didn't tell my parents, curious how long it would take them to notice. Instead, Marcus and I channeled the money toward a different dream: fertility treatments. We'd been trying to conceive naturally for a year without success, and tests had revealed some challenges that would require medical intervention. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked the night before our first appointment at the fertility clinic. Parenthood, I mean. Given everything with your parents. I considered the question seriously, as it deserved. I'm not saying it won't be complicated. I'm sure I'll have moments of panic, wondering if I'm repeating patterns without realizing it. I leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his steady presence. But I've spent so much time learning what not to do. I think maybe that's valuable too. The fertility journey proved more emotionally taxing than I'd anticipated. Each failed cycle brought grief and self-doubt. Each hormone injection and doctor's appointment reminded me of what wasn't happening naturally. Through it all, Marcus remained my rock, administering shots when needed, holding me through disappointments, celebrating small victories. Dr. Levine helped me process the complex emotions that surfaced during this time: fears about replicating my parents' conditional love, anxiety about whether I knew how to parent properly given my own experiences, grief for the childhood I hadn't had and worried I couldn't provide. What if I don't know how to love unconditionally? I confessed during one tearful session. What if it's not something you can learn if you've never experienced it? You've learned it, she assured me. Your relationship with Marcus shows that. Your friendships show that. You've built connections based on genuine care, not achievement or status. For months into fertility treatments, I stared in disbelief at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test. Against statistical odds, we'd conceived. I stood in the bathroom, hands shaking, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions: joy, terror, hope, uncertainty. Marcus found me there, still holding the test. His eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. Is that? I nodded wordlessly. His face transformed with pure happiness as he lifted me off my feet in a gentle embrace. We're having a baby. The pregnancy progressed normally, each ultrasound and checkup confirmation that our child was developing as expected. We decided not to learn the gender, wanting that one last surprise. Marcus and I spent evenings creating what we jokingly called our family constitution, explicit promises about how we would parent differently than we'd been parented. We wrote them in a leather-bound journal, a tangible commitment to breaking cycles of conditional love. We will celebrate effort over outcomes, Marcus wrote one night. We will apologize when we're wrong, I added. We will show up for every important moment, no matter what. We will love unconditionally, not based on achievement. The list grew as the pregnancy progressed, a roadmap for the parents we hoped to become. I shared minimal information about the pregnancy with my parents, still cautious about their involvement. My mother's reaction was predictably focused on appearances. Spring is a lovely time for a baby, she commented when I finally told her the due date. I'll need to plan a shower. The club has a beautiful room for such events. Kristen and Lisa are already planning something, I replied. Just close friends and family. Very small. Her disappointment was palpable but short-lived. Well, I suppose that's fine for a first baby. When you have more, we can do something more formal. The baby shower that Kristen and Lisa organized bore no resemblance to the society event my mother would have preferred. Held in Marcus's parents' backyard, it featured homemade decorations, games that made everyone laugh until they cried, and heartfelt gifts often accompanied by advice or wishes for the baby written in a keepsake book. My mother attended, looking slightly out of place in her designer outfit amid the casual gathering. She brought an extravagant silver baby rattle that probably cost more than all the other gifts combined. It's Tiffany, she explained, watching me unwrap it. A proper heirloom for your child. I thanked her sincerely, recognizing it as an effort, however misguided, to connect. Later, I found her sitting alone while everyone else participated in a particularly silly game involving diapers and melted chocolate bars. You have nice friends, she offered, sounding genuinely surprised. I do, I agreed. They've been there through everything. Something flickered across her face, recognition, perhaps, of what everything encompassed and her absence from it. But the moment passed without acknowledgement. My father maintained more distance, sending expensive baby furniture delivered by courier rather than attending gatherings in person. His card read simply, "For my grandchild. Congratulations." No mention of feelings, hopes, or connection, just the fact of the gift itself. Emma Rose Chin Mitchell arrived on a rainy April morning after 26 hours of labor. She entered the world with a powerful cry that the nurse said indicated healthy lungs and a strong personality. Holding her for the first time, I experienced a love so immediate and overwhelming it brought me to tears. "Hello, Emma," I whispered, counting her perfect fingers and toes. "You are so loved, exactly as you are." Marcus sat beside us on the hospital bed, his finger caught in Emma's surprisingly strong grip. "She's perfect," he said, voice thick with emotion. "She doesn't have to be," I replied, understanding washing over me. "That's the point. She's loved regardless." My in-laws arrived within hours, bearing homemade food, practical gifts, and boundless excitement. Lisa held Emma with the confidence of an experienced grandmother, cooing softly in both English and Mandarin. "She has your chin," Lisa told me, and Marcus's eyes. Perfect combination. My parents visited the following day, bringing an enormous flower arrangement and designer baby clothes still in store packaging. They stood awkwardly at the foot of my hospital bed, unsure of their role in this tableau. "Would you like to hold her?" I offered, extending an olive branch. My mother took Emma with careful hands, her usual poise momentarily replaced by uncertainty. "She's so small," she murmured. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, I supplied. Completely average and absolutely perfect. My father peered at Emma over my mother's shoulder, maintaining a safe distance. "She is good coloring. Healthy." It wasn't the emotional reaction I might have hoped for, but it was something, a beginning, perhaps, of a relationship built on their terms rather than mine. I'd accepted that my parents might never be the warm, supportive figures I'd craved growing up. But Emma deserved to know her grandparents, even in their limited capacity, as long as they respected our boundaries. In the months following Emma's birth, my parents' interest remained sporadic. My mother occasionally requested lunch dates where she'd bring expensive baby outfits Emma would quickly outgrow. My father sent emails inquiring about developmental milestones, as if checking boxes on a corporate assessment. Without financial incentive, their engagement remained superficial, present enough to claim grandparent status, but not involved enough to form meaningful bonds. And surprisingly, I found peace in this arrangement. The space between us protected Emma from the conditional love I'd experienced, while allowing her the benefit of extended family. I no longer expected my parents to change fundamentally, I'd simply changed how I engaged with them. The real parental warmth in Emma's life came from Marcus's family, who visited weekly, bringing homemade baby food, taking turns with midnight feedings when staying over, and celebrating every tiny milestone with genuine joy. Lisa taught me her mother's lullabies. Howard built a custom rocking chair for the nursery. Then there was our chosen family, Kristen, who became Auntie Kay and brought creative toys that stimulated Emma's curiosity, James and Priya from the startup days, who established a college fund instead of buying baby clothes. Neighbors who organized meal trains during those exhausting early weeks, colleagues who accommodated flexible schedules as Marcus and I balanced parenthood with careers. One evening, as Emma slept peacefully in her crib, Marcus and I sat on our porch swing, watching fireflies illuminate the summer dusk. "I've been thinking about wealth lately," I said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Oh." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Having second thoughts about selling the Porsche?" I laughed softly. "No. Just realizing that the most valuable things in my life have nothing to do with money." My parents chased status and possessions their entire lives, thinking that was success. But this, I gestured to our modest home, to the baby monitor showing our sleeping daughter. "This is the real wealth." Marcus squeezed my hand. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, you know. For breaking the cycle. For creating your own definition of family." Tears pricked my eyes at the mention of my grandmother, wishing she could have met Emma. I think about her advice all the time now. Family is what you create, not just what you're born into. She was right. The journey from that lonely, achievement-oriented childhood to this moment hadn't been linear or easy. The wounds inflicted by conditional love didn't disappear overnight. But sitting there, surrounded by the family we created through choice rather than obligation, I felt a completion that no parental approval or material success could provide. Emma would grow up knowing she was enough, exactly as she was. She would never wonder if our love depended on her achievements or possessions. Her worth wouldn't be measured by grades or trophies or future earning potential. And perhaps that was the greatest success of all, not the company acquisition or the impressive bank account, but the legacy of unconditional love that would continue through her. So what about you? Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Have you had to create boundaries with people who only valued you for what you could give them? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to see more content about navigating complicated relationships, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't tied to their achievements. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and remember, you're enough, exactly as you are.